The wedding dress felt like a death sentence. Berlin Thorne stood in the cramped dressing room, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The gown was beautiful. Ivory silk, delicate lace, tiny pearls sewn along the bodice. The kind of dress she had dreamed about wearing someday. But not like this. Never like this. The door slammed open. Nadine Thorne stormed in, her designer heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. The woman who had raised Berlin for 23 years circled her like a vulture examining prey. "Perfect," Nadine said. "You almost look like you belong in that dress." Berlin's hands trembled at her sides. "Please, I'm begging you, don't make me do this." "Make you?" Nadine laughed, the sound sharp enough to draw blood. "Sweetheart, I'm not making you do anything. You're choosing this. Because you want what I have." She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a worn velvet pouch. Berlin's heart stopped. The keepsake. Inside that pouch was a small golden locket with strange ancient writing carved into its surface. Berlin had carried it with her when the Thornes first took her in as a baby. It was the only thing she had from before. The only clue to the parents who had given her away. For 23 years, Nadine had dangled that locket like bait. "Be good, and maybe we'll help you translate the writing. Do your chores, and maybe we'll investigate your origins. Stop crying, and maybe we'll help you find your real family." Maybe. Always maybe. Promises that never came true. "I had a linguistics expert look at this once," Nadine said, tracing the velvet pouch with one manicured finger. "He said the writing is ancient, rare. Could be names, could be locations, could be the key to everything you've ever wanted to know." Berlin felt tears burning. "Then let me have it. Please, I've done everything you've asked." "Not everything." Nadine's voice turned to ice. "There's still the matter of this marriage." She stepped closer, gripping Berlin's chin with sharp fingernails. "Ivory refuses to marry Zaire Langston. Can't blame her. The man is paralyzed now. Broken. Useless. What kind of mother will I be to subject my precious daughter into marrying a cripple? But the Langston fortune is too valuable to walk away from. So you're going to take her place. The Langstons will know I'm not Ivory." They've never met Ivory in person. All negotiations happened through lawyers. Video calls where she kept her camera off. Nadine smiled coldly. "As far as they know, you are Ivory Thorne, and you will play this role perfectly." Berlin's voice cracked. "And if I don't?" Nadine held up the velvet pouch. "Then I burn this, right in front of you, and you'll spend the rest of your pathetic life wondering who you really are, where you came from, why you were thrown away like garbage." The words hit like physical blows. "Be a good girl," Nadine continued sweetly. "Make this marriage work. Keep the Langston money flowing. And when I'm satisfied, when we've gotten everything we need, I'll give you this locket. I'll hire the best translators in the world. I'll help you find your precious parents." She pressed the pouch back into her purse. "Do we have a deal?" Berlin looked at her reflection, at the beautiful dress, at the terrified woman wearing it. She thought about the locket, about the parents she had never known, about 23 years of hoping, dreaming, believing that somewhere out there, someone was looking for her. "Deal," she whispered. Nadine smiled triumphantly. "That's my girl." The Langston mansion rose against the Philadelphia sky like a fortress designed to keep the world out. Berlin pressed her face to the car window, her stomach churning. The estate was massive. Sprawling gardens, marble fountains, a driveway longer than the entire block where she grew up. The kind of place where people like her weren't welcome. People like her. Orphans. Nobodies. Charity cases kept around to do the dirty work. Vernon Thorne glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Remember the rules. You are Ivory Thorne, confident, sophisticated. Born into money. What if I make a mistake? What if they find out I'm not your real daughter?" Vernon snorted. "You've spent 23 years being invisible. Nobody's ever looked at you long enough to remember your face. That's the whole point." The words stung. They always did. The car stopped in front of enormous double doors. A severe woman in a black suit waited on the steps. Helena, the head housekeeper. "Follow me," Helena said without preamble. "Mr. Langston is waiting." Berlin followed on trembling legs. The corridors seemed to stretch forever. Oil paintings of stern ancestors lined the walls. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. Everything whispered old money, power, control. And somewhere in this palace of shadows lived the man she had been sold to. "A word of advice," Helena said as they walked. "Don't make him angry. Don't ask questions. Don't expect kindness." She paused. "The man you're about to meet is not the man he used to be. Since the accident, he's become difficult." "Difficult how?" Helena's expression flickered, almost pity. "3 nurses have quit in the past month. 1 left in an ambulance. The last physical therapist resigned after Mr. Langston threw a paperweight at his head." Berlin's blood ran cold. They stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "His bedroom," Helena said. "He rarely leaves it anymore." She pushed the door open and shoved Berlin inside. The room was dark. Heavy curtains blocked every trace of sunlight. The only illumination came from a small lamp in the corner, casting twisted shadows across expensive furniture. The air smelled stale and unused, like a tomb. And there, in the center of the darkness, sat a man in a wheelchair. Zaire Langston. Even sitting, he was terrifying. Broad shoulders strained against his black shirt. Arms like weapons rested on the chair. Overgrown curly hair and a short, messy ponytail that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in years. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines. A strong jaw, high cheekbones, full lips set in a permanent scowl. But it was his eyes that made Berlin forget how to breathe. Dark, intense, burning with barely contained fury. Those eyes found her in the shadows and held her like a trap. "So." His voice was deep and rough, like thunder rolling through a storm. "The Thorne family finally sent their precious daughter." Berlin forced herself to stand straight. "I'm Ivory. I know who you're supposed to be." The words hung in the air, loaded with something Berlin couldn't identify. Zaire wheeled himself closer. Each rotation of those wheels felt like a countdown. Closer, closer, until he was near enough that she could see the scar along his jawline, could feel the heat of his anger radiating like a furnace, could smell his cologne, something dark and masculine that made her pulse quicken despite her fear. "Let me tell you how this works, Ivory Thorne." He spat her sister's name like poison. "You stay in the East Wing. You don't enter my room without permission. You don't speak to me unless spoken to. You don't spend my money without my permission. You don't pretend this marriage is anything other than what it is." Berlin found her voice. "And what is it?" "A transaction." His lip curled. "Your family wants my money. My grandmother wants an heir. And I'm stuck in this chair, unable to stop any of you from circling like vultures." He wheeled even closer, close enough that Berlin had to step back. "But make no mistake." His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "I am not some helpless invalid. I built an empire from nothing. I destroyed men with more power than your entire family combined. And if I suspect you're scheming against me..." He grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. Crushing. Berlin gasped. "I will make you wish you had never been born." He released her suddenly. Berlin stumbled backward, her wrist throbbing. "Now get out of my sight." Berlin ran. She made it to the hallway before the tears came. What had she done? What nightmare had she walked into? The man in that room wasn't just angry. He was dangerous. The kind of person who hurt others because he couldn't stop hurting himself. And she was supposed to live with him, pretend to be his wife, survive long enough to get the keepsake back from Nadine. Berlin pressed her hand against her chest, feeling for the phantom weight of the locket that wasn't there. Her parents. Somewhere out there, her real parents existed. Or had existed. Maybe they were dead. Maybe they were searching for her. Maybe they had never wanted her at all. But the locket was her only chance of knowing. And for that chance, she would endure anything, even a monster like Zaire Langston. The first week was hell. Zaire refused to eat, refused to leave his room, refused to acknowledge Berlin's existence except to throw things at the door when she knocked. The staff avoided her like she carried disease. They whispered behind her back, called her a gold digger, placed bets on how long she would last. Berlin ate her meals alone, wandered the mansion's endless corridors alone, lay awake at night alone, wondering if she had made the worst mistake of her life. But on the 8th morning, everything changed. Berlin was walking past the kitchen when she heard the crash. Then, the screaming. She rushed toward the noise and stopped dead in the doorway. The kitchen was a battlefield. Food splattered the walls. Broken plates covered the floor. A heavy-set man in a chef's uniform cowered by the stove, sobbing. And in the center of the destruction sat Zaire Langston, his wheelchair surrounded by ruins. "I said I'm not hungry," Zaire roared. "Are you deaf? Are you stupid? Take this garbage away before I shove it down your throat." The chef, Gordon, wept harder. "Sir, please, you haven't eaten in 4 days. The doctor said—" "I don't care what the doctor said." Zaire grabbed a plate and hurled it. It shattered inches from Gordon's head. The chef screamed and fled, pushing past Berlin without seeing her. Silence fell. Zaire sat there, breathing hard, surrounded by destruction. His hands were shaking. His jaw was tight. And for just a moment, Berlin saw something beneath the rage. Pain, exhaustion, despair. She should leave, should run like everyone else, should protect herself. But something inside her snapped. That was pathetic. Zaire's head whipped toward her. His eyes blazed. "What did you just say?" Berlin stepped into the kitchen, glass crunching under her slippers. Her heart hammered so loud she could hear it, but she kept walking. "I said that was pathetic. A grown man throwing food at walls, making his chef cry, refusing to eat because— What? Because you're angry at the world?" Zaire's face contorted with fury. "You don't know anything about—" "You're right, I don't." Berlin reached the table and surveyed the scattered breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, all ruined. "I don't know what happened to you. I don't know why you're in that chair. I don't know why you've decided to make everyone around you miserable." She turned to face him directly. "But I know what I saw. A man who's been cooking for you for years, who clearly cares whether you live or die, running out of here in tears because you couldn't control your temper." Zaire's grip tightened on his armrests. "He's paid to cook, not to care." "Is he? Because Gordon's the only person in this house who hasn't given up on you." Berlin crossed her arms. "Everyone else has. The nurses, the doctors, your family, they're all waiting for you to rot away. But Gordon keeps making you breakfast. Every single day. Even though you throw it at walls. Even though you scream at him. Even though you haven't thanked him once." She paused. "That's not just a paycheck. That's someone who still sees you as a human being, and you made him feel worthless for it." The kitchen went silent. Zaire stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise? Confusion? Interest? "You done?" he finally asked. "Almost." Berlin walked to the counter and found a pan of eggs still warm on the stove. She scraped them onto a surviving plate. Added toast, fruit, carried the plate to Zaire and set it on his lap. "Eat." His laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "You're ordering me to eat? In my own house?" "Yes." "And if I refuse?" Berlin picked up a fork, scooped some eggs, and held it directly in front of his face. "Then I'll feed you myself, like a baby, and I'll make sure every single member of your staff is watching." Zaire's eyes widened. Something dangerous flickered in them, but also something else. Something almost like amusement. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." They stared at each other. The air crackled between them. Berlin's hand trembled slightly. Any second now, he would explode. Throw her out. Have security drag her away. But Zaire Langston did something she never expected. He laughed. A real laugh. Not cruel or bitter. Surprised. Almost warm. "You have got to be the most insane woman I've ever met," he said. "Probably." Berlin kept the fork steady. "Now eat your eggs before they get cold." Something shifted in his expression. The rage didn't disappear, but it softened at the edges, made room for something else. Curiosity, respect, interest. He took the fork from her hand. Their fingers brushed, just for a second, and Berlin felt electricity shoot up her arm. She stepped back quickly, her heart suddenly racing for a different reason entirely. "I'm eating because I'm hungry," Zaire said gruffly, "not because you told me to." "Whatever helps you sleep at night." He took a bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. "These are cold now," he muttered. "Whose fault is that?" Another almost laugh escaped him. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you, K. Ivory Thorn?" The fake name cut through Berlin's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Probably," she said. "Now finish your breakfast, and apologize to Gordon later." She turned and walked out before he could respond, but she felt his eyes following her the entire way, and her skin burned wherever his gaze landed. "Okay, y'all, I need to pause right here because did you see what just happened? This girl walked into a monster's den, threatened to spoon-feed a billionaire CEO like a baby, and lived to tell about it. Berlin Thorn is built different. But did you catch that moment when their fingers touched? The way he looked at her when she walked away? Something is starting here, and neither of them knows what to do about it. Comment Berlin is that girl if you're already rooting for her. And smash that subscribe button because this is just the beginning. The apology happened 3 days later. Berlin was passing the kitchen when she heard Zaire's voice. She stopped outside, listening. "Gordon." Yes, sir?" The chef's voice trembled. A long pause. Berlin could practically hear Zaire wrestling with the words. "The eggs you made on Tuesday, they were..." Another pause. "They weren't terrible." Silence. "Sir?" "I said they weren't terrible. Don't make me repeat myself." Zaire's voice turned gruff. "And the toast was acceptable. The fruit was fresh. You've been doing adequate work." More silence. Then Gordon burst into tears, happy ones this time. "Oh, sir, thank you, sir. I promise I'll keep doing my best." "Don't get emotional. It's annoying." But Zaire's voice had lost its sharp edge. "Just keep cooking. And stop crying." "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Wheels creaked toward the door. Berlin stepped back, pretending she'd just arrived. Zaire emerged and immediately spotted her. "Eavesdropping?" he asked. "Wouldn't dream of it." She kept her face innocent. "Just passing through." Zaire studied her for a long moment. His dark eyes traveled over her face, searching for something. Berlin felt heat rising to her cheeks under his scrutiny. "That thing you said," he finally spoke. "About Gordon caring." He paused. "You weren't entirely wrong." "Was that a compliment?" "Don't push your luck." He wheeled past her, but just before turning the corner, he glanced back. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, something electric and unspoken. Then he was gone, and Berlin stood in the hallway, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't want to examine too closely. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Berlin started spending more time with Zaire. It began with physical therapy. She had taught herself basic rehabilitation techniques from medical books over the years, another skill picked up from her invisible life with the Thorns. One evening, she appeared at Zaire's door with a proposal. "I've been reading about rehabilitation," she said. "There are exercises that could maintain your muscle mass, prevent atrophy, maybe even..." "My doctor's tried everything." Zaire didn't look up from his laptop. "My legs don't work. End of story." "Your doctor spent 15 minutes with you between golf games." Berlin walked in uninvited. I'm talking about actually trying, every day, consistently. You're not a doctor. No, I'm your wife. The words felt strange. And I'm not giving up on you even if you've given up on yourself. Zaire finally looked at her. His gaze traveled slowly from her face down to her hands as she knelt before him. Hands that were already reaching for his leg, ready to work. Something flickered in his expression when her palm made contact with his knee. She inhaled sharply at the searing heat from his skin. Even with the layer of cloth between it and her palm, she looked up at him from her kneeling position. "Give me a chance," she pleaded, softly adding when he remained motionless, just boring holes into her face. "Please." 1 week, he said quietly, turning his gaze back to his laptop. "Prove this isn't a waste of time." Berlin smiled. Deal. The first session was a disaster. Zaire complained constantly. The stretches hurt. The movements were pointless. Berlin didn't know what she was doing. "Are you always this dramatic?" Berlin asked, manipulating his right leg through a range of motion exercise. "Are you always this annoying?" Only with patients who refused to cooperate. Their eyes met, held. Berlin became suddenly aware of how close she was to him, her hands on his leg, his dark eyes watching her every movement, that abnormal heat of his skin through the fabric of his pants. She looked away quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Focus," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "On what?" His voice had dropped lower, rougher. Berlin didn't answer, couldn't answer, because she was terrified of what she might say. By the third session, Zaire had stopped complaining. By the fifth, he was actually cooperating. And by the seventh, something miraculous happened. Berlin was massaging his calf, working on the deep tissue, when Zaire suddenly went rigid. "Stop!" Berlin froze. "Did I hurt you?" "No." His voice was strange, breathless. "I felt that." "Felt what?" "Your hands, on my leg." He stared at his own limb like it belonged to a stranger. "I felt pressure, warmth." Berlin's heart leaped. "Zaire, that's incredible. It means nothing." He pulled away, his expression shuddering. "Phantom sensation. Happens all the time. Or it means the nerves aren't as damaged as the doctors thought. The doctors said, the doctors don't know everything." Berlin grabbed his wheelchair, forcing him to look at her. "You felt something. After months of nothing. That's not random. That's progress." Their faces were inches apart now. Berlin could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel his breath warm against her skin, could smell that intoxicating cologne that made her head spin. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Zaire's gaze dropped to her lips. Just for a second. But Berlin caught it. Her breath hitched. "Same time tomorrow?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Zaire's jaw tightened. He leaned back, putting distance between them. "Same time tomorrow," he agreed. Berlin fled to her room and spent the next hour trying to calm her racing heart. This was dangerous. So dangerous. She was falling for a man who didn't even know her real name. The progress continued, and so did the tension. Every therapy session became an exercise in self-control. Berlin's hands on Zaire's legs, his eyes tracking her every movement. Accidental touches that lingered a moment too long. Charged silences that neither of them knew how to break. "You're distracted today," Zaire observed one evening. Berlin startled. "What? No, I'm not. You've been massaging the same spot for 5 minutes." She looked down. He was right. "Sorry, what are you thinking about?" "You," she almost said. "The way you look at me. The way my heart races when you're close. The way I'm terrified of what's happening between us." "Nothing," she said instead. "Just tired." Zaire studied her face. "You're lying." "I'm not." "Your left eye twitches when you lie." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "It's subtle, but I've noticed." Berlin's breath caught. "You've been watching me that closely?" "I watch everything." His dark eyes held hers. Especially things that interest me. The words hung in the air. Things that interest me. Berlin's heart hammered against her ribs. Zaire, we should stop for tonight. He wheeled back abruptly, breaking the moment. It's getting late. Berlin nodded, not trusting her voice. But as she gathered her things and headed for the door, Zaire spoke again. Ivory. She turned. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Something intense. Almost hungry. Thank you, he said quietly. For not giving up. On your therapy? A pause. On me. Berlin felt something crack open in her chest. You're worth not giving up on, she whispered. Then she left before she could say anything else, before she could do something stupid. Like tell him the truth, like tell him she was falling in love. 2 weeks later, the Thorns made their move. Berlin was in her room when her phone rang. Nadine's number flashed on the screen. Her stomach dropped. Hello? Well, well. Nadine's voice dripped with false sweetness. The prodigal daughter finally answers. What do you want? Straight to business. Good. Nadine's tone turned cold. Your father has gambling debts. He needs $100,000 by the end of the month. Berlin's blood ran cold. 100,000? I don't have access to... Then get access. Nadine's voice sharpened. You're married to a billionaire. Figure it out. Fake an illness. Forge medical bills. Get creative. You want me to steal from my husband? I want you to remember your place. Nadine laughed cruelly. You think he'd still want you if he knew the truth? If he found out his wife is actually a nobody? An orphan? Berlin felt tears burning. Send me the money by month's end, Nadine continued. Or I call the Langstons and tell them everything. And while I'm at it, maybe I'll destroy that little locket of yours. Burn it. Toss the ashes in the trash. No. The word tore from Berlin's throat. Please, the keepsake is all I have. Then do what you're told. Money. End of month. Don't disappoint me. The line went dead. Berlin sank onto her bed, shaking. She couldn't do this. Couldn't steal from Zaire. Couldn't become the gold digger he had initially believed her to be. But the keepsake. For 23 years, she had believed that locket held the answers. Names, locations, clues to the parents who had given her away. If Nadine destroyed it, Berlin would never know. Would never find out who she really was. Would stay nobody forever. Berlin has been backed into a corner. It's either she cons money from Zaire for Nardine, or she loses what she believes is her only chance to know where she came from. Do you think she should go ahead and get the money or tell Zaire the truth? Comment your opinion in the comments section now. I'll be reading. The days flew by. Berlin lost sleep, ate poorly, pretended to be in her usual high spirits around Zaire. But Berlin couldn't steal from Zaire. Couldn't fake illness. Couldn't become everything he had thought she was and had despised her for. 3 days to the Nardine's deadline, Berlin made up her mind. She would tell him the truth. All of it. Who she really was. Why she was here. What Nadine was threatening. Maybe he would throw her out. Maybe he would hate her. But at least she would stop living a lie. She found him in his study, standing, actually standing, by the window with a cane. His recovery had accelerated dramatically. He could take steps now, could support his own weight for minutes at a time. Berlin had done that, had given him that. And now she was about to destroy everything. Zaire. Her voice trembled. I need to tell you something. He turned. The evening light caught his profile, the sharp jaw, the strong brow, the lips she had imagined kissing far too many times. He looked powerful even with the cane. Commanding. The kind of man who controlled rooms just by entering them. That sounds serious, he said. It is. Berlin closed the door. Please, just let me say everything before you respond. Zaire set aside his cane and lowered himself into a chair. His dark eyes never left her face. I'm listening. Berlin took a shaky breath. My name isn't Ivory. It's Berlin. Berlin Thorn. The words tumbled out. Ivory is my adoptive sister, the one who was supposed to marry you, but she refused because you were paralyzed. She didn't want to be tied to someone she saw as broken. Zaire's expression didn't change. The Thorns took me in as a baby, an orphan. They never treated me like family. I was more like a servant, someone to do the work Ivory didn't want. Berlin felt tears threatening. When Ivory refused the marriage, Nadine decided I would take her place. She threatened me, used the only thing I have from my real parents to control me. The keepsake, Zaire said quietly. Berlin blinked. How did you keep going? She swallowed. It's a locket, with ancient writing I've never been able to translate. I've had it since I was a baby. It's the only connection to whoever my real parents are. Nadine has been dangling it over me for 23 years, promising to help me find answers if I just do one more thing. Be good one more time. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She's threatening to destroy it if I don't steal money from you. $100,000 by the end of the month. Berlin laughed bitterly. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't become the gold digger you warned me about. Not after everything we've been through. Not after... She stopped. Not after what? Zaire asked softly. Berlin met his eyes. Not after I fell in love with you. The words hung between them. Zaire rose from his chair slowly, deliberately, without the cane. He walked toward her, each step steady, controlled, powerful. Berlin's heart pounded. I know you hate liars, she whispered. I know I'm exactly the kind of person you despised. A fraud, an imposter. I'll leave tonight. You'll never have to see me. Zaire kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't hesitant. It was consuming, demanding. A kiss that claimed and conquered and left no room for doubt. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped his shirt. The world disappeared. The study, the mansion, Nadine's threats, everything. There was only Zaire, only his lips on hers, only the fire building between them. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. I know, he said. Berlin stared at him, dazed. What? I know you're not Ivory. His thumb traced her cheekbone gently. I've known for weeks. How? Since the kitchen. Zaire's eyes burned into hers. I've heard stories about Ivory Thorn. Everyone has. She's selfish, spoiled, wouldn't lift a finger to help anyone. But you walked into my kitchen and screamed at me for being cruel. You defended a chef you just met. You threatened a man everyone else was terrified of. His hand cupped her jaw. That's not Ivory Thorn. That's someone real, someone good, someone who actually cares about people. Berlin's tears flowed faster. Why didn't you say anything? I wanted to see what you would do, who you really were. He pressed his forehead against hers. I had my people investigate the Thorn family. Found records of another daughter, an orphan they'd taken in and treated like garbage. Found out about the keepsake, about how they've been manipulating you your whole life. You knew everything? Not your name. Not until now. He pulled back to look at her. Berlin, it suits you. She laughed through her tears. You're not angry? I'm furious. His jaw tightened. At the Thorns, at what they did to you, at myself for not telling you sooner that you didn't have to keep pretending. He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. But I'm not angry at you, he murmured against her lips. I could never be angry at you. Berlin wrapped her arms around his neck and held on like she would never let go. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. Zaire's arms tightened around her. My wife, my real wife. Berlin Langston. She laughed, crying, happier than she had ever been. I'm not a Langston. You are now, and you will be forever. He pulled back, his expression fierce. No one touches you, no one threatens you, no one makes you feel worthless ever again. Zaire, we're going to deal with the thorns, together. We're going to get your keepsake back, and we're going to make them pay for every single thing they did to you. Berlin looked into his eyes, those dark, intense, beautiful eyes that had once terrified her. Together? She asked. Zaire smiled. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, softer, like the man he might have been before the accident, before the bitterness, before the world tried to break him. Together, he promised. But happy endings have enemies, and theirs was already watching. In the shadows of the corridor outside Zaire's study, a figure had just arrived with a phone pressed to his ear. "So you're saying she's not your real daughter?" Kendrick Langston said quietly. "And my dear cousin has no idea." The voice on the other end, Nadine Thorne, laughed coldly. "Yes, if you say your card's right, this is to your advantage. What do you want to do?" "The Langston Foundation Gala is next week. Everyone will be there, including your grandmother." Nadine's voice turned sharp. "You will expose the little fraud in front of Philadelphia society, destroy her reputation, humiliate Zaire for harboring an imposter. His grandmother will not take it. He may accept her, but if she insists she doesn't want a fraud like her, Zaire would have to give her up or give up his inheritance. And then? And then, my dear Kendrick, you take everything they have after you give me my cut, of course." Kendrick smiled in the darkness. "I'll be in touch." He hung up and walked away, already imagining the destruction to come. The morning after Berlin's confession, she woke up certain it had all been a dream. The kiss, the words, the way Zaire had looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Then she saw the dress. It hung on her closet door like a promise. Deep burgundy silk that shimmered like liquid wine in the morning light. Delicate gold embroidery traced intricate patterns along the bodice. The kind of dress that cost more than the average person made in a year. A note was pinned to the hanger in familiar masculine handwriting. "Breakfast on the terrace. Wear this. We're celebrating." Zed. Berlin touched the fabric with trembling fingers. It was impossibly soft, impossibly beautiful. There was more. On her vanity sat several velvet boxes she hadn't noticed before. She opened them one by one, her breath catching with each reveal. Gold heels with burgundy accents and tiny rubies along the straps. A delicate bracelet studded with diamonds that caught the morning light. Earrings that dangled like captured starlight. And a necklace, a simple gold chain with a pendant shaped like a key. Another note was tucked beneath it. "The key to every door in this house. It's yours now, all of it." Zed. Berlin pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. This wasn't just a gift. This was a declaration. She got dressed with shaking hands. The gown fit like it had been made for her body, hugging her curves, making her brown skin glow against the rich burgundy. She put on the jewelry, styled her hair in soft waves, and clasped the key pendant around her neck. Her own golden locket was still with Nadine. But somehow, this key felt like a different kind of promise. When she finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who mattered. She looked like someone who was loved. The terrace was bathed in golden morning light. White linen covered an elegant table set for two. Fresh flowers, roses and orchids and something exotic Berlin couldn't name, cascaded from crystal vases. Silver domes covered dishes that smelled incredible. Champagne chilled in a bucket of ice. But Berlin barely noticed any of it. Because standing at the terrace railing, his back to her, was Zaire. Not in his wheelchair, not leaning on his cane. Standing tall and powerful in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and narrow waist. The morning sun caught the sharp angles of his jaw. The strong line of his profile, the way his dark skin seemed to glow with health and vitality. His hair, once curly and messy, was now slicked back in a short ponytail. He must have heard her footsteps because he turned. And Berlin forgot how to breathe. She had always known Zaire was handsome. Even angry and bitter and confined to a wheelchair, his looks had been impossible to ignore. But standing here now, dressed like he owned the world, which, she supposed, he partly did. He was devastating. His dark eyes traveled over her slowly, taking in the dress, the jewelry, the way the burgundy silk draped over her curves, the key pendant resting against her collarbone. Something flickered in his expression, something hot and hungry that made Berlin's knees weak. "You wore it," he said. His voice was deeper than usual, rougher, like he was fighting to control something. "You bought it," Berlin managed. "All of it. This must have cost a fortune." "I have a fortune." He walked toward her, each step measured, predatory, controlled. "And I plan to spend every cent of it spoiling you." Berlin's heart raced as he drew closer. "Zaire, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to." He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, dark, masculine, intoxicating, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough that, if she rose on her tiptoes, she could kiss him. "I want to," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "For the first time in years, I want something for myself, and what I want is to give you everything." Berlin's breath caught. "Everything, everything." His hand rose to trace the key pendant at her throat. His fingers brushed her collarbone, and electricity shot through her entire body. "This house, this fortune, this life, it's all yours now, Berlin." The sound of her real name on his lips made her shiver. "I don't need all that," she whispered. "I just need you." Something cracked open in Zaire's expression. The careful control he always maintained slipped, just for a moment, revealing something raw and vulnerable beneath. "You have me," he said roughly, "completely, irrevocably, for as long as you want me. What if I want you forever?" Zaire's answer was a kiss. Not gentle, not tentative, consuming. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath. Berlin grabbed the lapels of his suit, pulling him closer, desperate for more. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Zaire pressed his forehead against hers. "Forever it is," he murmured. Berlin laughed, giddy and breathless. "We should probably eat breakfast before it gets cold." "Probably." But he didn't move. His hands stayed tangled in her hair. His eyes stayed locked on hers. "Or we could skip breakfast entirely." Heat flooded Berlin's cheeks. "Zaire." He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face, and finally released her. "Fine. Breakfast first." He pulled out her chair with exaggerated formality. "But I'm not making any promises about lunch." Berlin sat down, her heart still racing, her skin still tingling everywhere he had touched. This was real. This was actually happening. She was falling in love with her husband. And for once in her life, someone was falling right back. They ate breakfast slowly, savoring every moment. Gordon had outdone himself. Fluffy omelets, fresh fruit, warm pastries, crispy bacon. Berlin made a mental note to thank him later, effusively. "So," Zaire said, pouring her more champagne, "we need to talk about the thorns." The bubble of happiness in Berlin's chest deflated slightly. "I know. Nadine's deadline is in 3 days. She's expecting money, or she'll try to expose you." Zaire's expression hardened. "I have a plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind that destroys her before she can destroy you." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "My investigators have been digging into Vernon's business dealings for weeks. We've found evidence of fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, enough to put him in prison for decades." Berlin's eyes widened. "You've been investigating them this whole time?" "Since the day you yelled at me in the kitchen." Zaire's lips curved slightly. "I told you, I watch everything, especially things that interest me, and you, Berlin, interested me from the very beginning." Warmth spread through her chest. "So what's the plan?" "We confront Nadine, use the evidence as leverage, get your keepsake back." Zaire's jaw tightened. And make sure she never threatens you again. We? Berlin shook her head. Zaire, I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to do this myself. His eyebrows rose. What? Nadine has controlled me my entire life. She used that locket to manipulate me for 23 years, made me feel worthless. Made me believe I was nothing without her help. Berlin's voice strengthened. If you swoop in and handle everything, then she wins. She'll still have power over me. She'll still be the one who decided my fate. She reached across the table and took his hand. I need to be the one to end this. I need to face her myself. Zaire studied her for a long moment. She could see him wrestling with it, the protective instinct warring with understanding. I don't like it, he finally said. I know. She's dangerous, vindictive. She'll try to hurt you. I know that too. Berlin squeezed his hand. But I'm not the scared little orphan she raised anymore. I'm stronger now, braver, and I have something I never had before. What's that? Someone waiting for me to come home. Something flickered in Zaire's dark eyes. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture, so tender, so unexpected from a man so fierce, made Berlin's heart stutter. Fine, he said against her skin. You face Nadine, but I'm going to be close by, and the moment things go wrong, I'm stepping in. Non-negotiable. Berlin smiled. Deal. Zaire Langston is whipped, and he doesn't even care who knows it. But here's the thing. Berlin is about to face down the woman who abused her for 23 years. Alone. And we know Nadine is working with Kendrick behind the scenes. Comment "Go off Berlin" if you're ready to see her stand up for herself. Like and subscribe, because this confrontation is about to be everything. The meeting was set for the following evening. Berlin had texted Nadine from her own phone, not hiding behind Zaire's protection, not pretending to be anyone other than who she was. Grand Monarch Hotel, room 847, tomorrow at 8 p.m. I have what you want. Nadine's response had been immediate. Finally. Don't be late. Now Berlin stood in her room at the Langston mansion, preparing for battle. She chose her outfit carefully. A sleek black dress that Zaire had bought her. Expensive, elegant, powerful. The gold heels with the ruby accents, the diamond bracelet, the key pendant that marked her as a Langston. She looked like a woman who belonged in Zaire's world. She looked like a woman who refused to be broken. A knock came at her door. Come in. Zaire entered, his expression tight with concern. He was dressed in all black, shirt, pants, jacket, looking like a dangerous shadow. The car's ready, he said. Theo will be in the lobby with security. I'll be in the room next door, 847B. If anything happens, if she tries anything, you call for me. I will. He crossed the room and took her hands. I don't like this, he said again. I know. Berlin rose on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. But I need to do this. For me. For the girl I used to be who never had anyone fighting for her. Zaire's forehead pressed against hers. You have someone now. I know. She smiled. That's why I'm brave enough to fight for myself. He kissed her, deep and fierce and full of things he couldn't say. Come home to me, he murmured against her lips. Always. The Grand Monarch Hotel was exactly Nadine's style. Opulent, expensive, dripping with the kind of wealth that made ordinary people feel small. Berlin walked through the marble lobby with her head held high. She wasn't small anymore. The elevator carried her to the 8th floor. Room 847 was at the end of a long corridor. Berlin paused outside the door. 23 years of fear and manipulation pressed against her chest. 23 years of being told she was nothing. Nobody. Garbage that someone threw away. She thought about the key pendant around her neck. Thought about Zaire waiting in the next room. Thought about the woman she had become. Strong enough to stand up to monsters. Brave enough to demand what was hers. She knocked. The door swung open immediately. Nadine Thorne stood in the doorway, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, cold, calculating eyes. Well, well, Nadine smiled like a snake. The prodigal daughter. You're right on time. She stepped aside. Berlin entered the suite. It was luxurious. Elegant furniture, panoramic windows, champagne chilling on a side table. And sitting on the couch, looking uncomfortable in a cheap suit, was Vernon Thorne. Berlin's adoptive father looked older than she remembered. Grayer. The gambling debts had clearly taken their toll. Berlin. He nodded stiffly. You look different. That's what happens when you stop letting people treat you like garbage. Nadine laughed, settling into an armchair like a queen on her throne. Still so dramatic. Sit down. Let's discuss your payment. Berlin remained standing. I'm not paying you anything. The temperature in the room dropped. Excuse me? Nadine's smile vanished. You heard me. Berlin's voice was steady, calm. I'm not giving you a single dollar. Not now. Not ever. Then I'll expose you. Nadine's eyes glittered dangerously. I'll call the Langstons right now. Tell them their precious daughter-in-law is a fraud, an imposter, a charity case pretending to be… Zaire already knows. Silence. Nadine's face went through several expressions. Shock, disbelief, calculation. You're lying. I told him everything 3 days ago. Who I really am. Why I was sent here. What you've been holding over me. Berlin smiled coldly. He didn't throw me out. He kissed me. Told me he loved me. Told me I was his wife. His real wife. No matter what name was on my birth certificate. Vernon made a strangled noise. Nadine's composure cracked, just for a second. That's impossible. A man like Zaire Langston would never accept. A man like Zaire Langston sees through manipulation. Berlin stepped closer. He's been investigating you for weeks, both of you. The fraud, the embezzlement, the offshore accounts Vernon has been funneling company money into for the past decade. Vernon shot to his feet. How did you? The Langston family has entire departments dedicated to financial crimes. They've brought down corporations, exposed senators. Berlin tilted her head. Did you really think your pathetic little schemes wouldn't be discovered? Nadine's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Berlin pulled out her phone and navigated to a file. Cayman Island accounts, Delaware shell companies, wire transfers conveniently timed before audits. It's all here, Nadine. Every dirty secret you've tried to hide. She turned the screen toward them. The horror on their faces was deeply satisfying. Here's what's going to happen, Berlin continued. You're going to give me my keepsake, the locket you've been dangling over my head for 23 years. You're going to hand it over right now. And if I don't, then this evidence goes to the FBI tomorrow morning. Berlin's voice hardened. And you both spend the rest of your miserable lives in prison. Vernon grabbed Nadine's arm. Give it to her. Just give it to her. Shut up, you spineless… give it to her. The desperation in his voice echoed through the suite. Nadine's jaw clenched. Her eyes blazed with fury. But Berlin could see the calculation happening, the realization that, for once, she didn't hold the cards. Slowly, Nadine reached into her designer purse. She pulled out the worn velvet pouch. Berlin's heart clenched at the sight. The keepsake. After 23 years. Take it. Nadine threw the pouch onto the coffee table with contempt. Take it and choke on it. Berlin picked it up with trembling hands. The velvet was soft, familiar. How many nights had she dreamed about this moment? How many tears had she cried, believing she would never hold this locket again? There's something you should know, Nadine said, venom dripping from every word. I had that locket translated years ago, paid good money for it. Berlin looked up. What? The writing on that locket? It's not a map to your precious parents. It's not names or directions or clues. Nadine laughed bitterly. It's just some ancient proverb. Meaningless words about perseverance or strength or some such nonsense. Berlin felt her chest tighten. You're lying. For once, I'm not. Nadine stood, gathering her purse. Your parents didn't leave you breadcrumbs, Berlin. They left you nothing. You're exactly what I always told you, nobody, nothing. An orphan who got thrown away. She walked toward the door, Vernon scrambling after her. Keep the locket. Keep your billionaire husband. Keep pretending you're somebody. Nadine paused at the threshold. But remember, no matter how high you climb, you'll always be the girl nobody wanted. She walked out. The door slammed behind her. Berlin stood alone, clutching the velvet pouch to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She didn't remember leaving the hotel. Didn't remember the car ride home. Didn't remember walking through the mansion's corridors. She only became aware of her surroundings when strong arms wrapped around her and a deep voice murmured in her ear. Berlin, I stayed in that room for hours not knowing you had already left. She blinked. She had been so lost in a daze she had completely forgotten she went into the hotel with company. Zair's face swam into focus. He was holding her tightly, his expression fierce with concern. What happened? I got it back. Berlin held up the velvet pouch. The keepsake, I got it back. Relief flickered across his features. Good, that's good. She said something. Berlin's voice cracked. Nadine, she said she had it translated years ago, that it's not a map to my parents. It's just a proverb, something meaningless. Zair's arms tightened around her. She could be lying, trying to hurt you one last time. Maybe? Berlin pressed her face against his chest. But what if she's not? What if I've been chasing nothing this whole time? What if there are no answers, no parents to find? What if I'm just... Her voice broke completely. What if I really am nobody? Zair pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. His dark eyes burned into hers. Listen to me, he said fiercely. You are not nobody. You are the woman who walked into a monster's house and made him human again. You are smart and brave and kind. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. But let me finish. His thumbs wiped her tears. Even if Nadine is telling the truth, even if that locket holds nothing but an old proverb, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you worthless. It doesn't make you nobody. He pressed his forehead against hers. Your identity isn't written on that locket, Berlin. It's written in everything you do, every act of kindness. Every moment of courage, every time you chose to be good when the world gave you every reason to be cruel. Berlin sobbed harder. Can we still try to translate it? She whispered. I need to know for sure. Of course. Zair kissed her softly. I know a professor at the university, specializes in ancient African dialects. If anyone can tell us what that writing really says, it's him. And if it really is just a proverb? Zair was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that shattered her heart and rebuilt it in the same breath. Then I'll be your family. From now until forever. You'll never be alone again. You'll never be unwanted. You'll never be nobody. Berlin threw her arms around his neck and wept. And Zair held her through it all, strong and steady and unwavering. Her anchor in the storm. Her home. Berlin spent her whole life chasing answers about where she came from, and Zair just told her it doesn't matter because she has him now. The way he holds her? The way he wiped her tears? This is what love looks like. Comment forever if you're crying too. Subscribe because we still have to deal with Kendrick, and the gala is about to change everything. The translation came back 3 days later. Professor Adeyemi sat across from Berlin in Zair's study, the ancient locket resting between them on the desk. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The writing is from a very old dialect, the professor explained. Almost extinct now. It's remarkable that it survived on such a small piece of jewelry. Berlin's hands twisted in her lap. What does it say? Zair sat beside her, his hand covering hers. A silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Professor Adeyemi smiled gently. It's a blessing. The kind parents would give their children before a long journey. He read from his notes. Though the storm rages and the path disappears, The child of strength walks forward. For home is not where you begin. It is where you are finally seen. Berlin stared at the words. That's it? That's all? That's all. The professor leaned forward. But if I may say, this is not a meaningless message. Someone carved these words into gold. Someone placed this around your neck when you were just a baby. They were giving you a piece of themselves. He stood to leave. You may never find your biological parents, but whoever they were, they loved you enough to leave you with a blessing. That is not nothing. That is everything. After he left, silence filled the study. Berlin held the locket in her palm, staring at the ancient writing she still couldn't read. For 23 years, she had believed this tiny piece of gold would give her answers, would lead her to her parents, would tell her who she really was. But it was just a proverb, just words, not a map, not names, not answers. I wasted so much time, she whispered. So many years hoping, believing, letting Nadine control me because I thought this would save me. Zaire turned her to face him. His dark eyes were fierce with emotion. It did save you. What? Think about it, Berlin. That locket, that hope, is what kept you going. Through 23 years of abuse. Through every moment when giving up would have been easier. He took the locket from her hands and held it up to the light. This proverb isn't meaningless. It's exactly what you needed to hear. Berlin's brow furrowed. I don't understand. Though the storm rages and the path disappears, the child of strength walks forward. Zaire's voice was soft. For home is not where you begin. It is where you are finally seen. He clasped the locket around her neck, his fingers warm against her skin. That's you, Berlin, the child of strength who kept walking through storms, who survived everything the world threw at her, who never gave up, even when she had every reason to. His hands cupped her face. And now you're here, with me, in a place where you're finally, truly seen. Berlin felt tears streaming down her cheeks. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of understanding. My parents knew, she whispered. They knew I would face hard things, so they gave me words to hold on to, a reminder to keep going. And you did. Zaire kissed her forehead. You kept going until you found home. Berlin looked around the study, at the beautiful room in the beautiful mansion, at the man who had become her entire world. I found home, she repeated softly. You found home, Zaire agreed. She kissed him then, deep and tender and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When they finally pulled apart, Berlin was smiling through her tears. Thank you, she said. For what? For being my home, for seeing me when no one else did, for making me believe I was worth saving. Zaire's expression softened. You were always worth saving, Berlin. You just needed someone to show you. He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. For 23 years, she had searched for where she came from. But the proverb was right. Home wasn't about beginnings. It was about belonging. And she finally belonged. But their peace was about to be shattered. The Langston Foundation Gala was 3 days away. Berlin threw herself into preparations, grateful for the distraction. There were dress fittings, menu tastings, guest list reviews. Grandmother Vivian had strong opinions about everything, and Berlin found herself surprisingly enjoying the verbal sparring. The centerpieces are too tall, Vivian declared during one planning meeting. People can't see across the table. The florist said tall centerpieces are fashionable this season, Berlin countered. Fashion is for sheep. Functionality is for leaders. The old woman's eyes glittered with approval. You're learning. Berlin smiled. I had good teachers. Vivian harumphed, but Berlin caught the tiny curve of her lips. Progress. Meanwhile, Zaire was acting strangely. He spent hours locked in his study with Theo, poring over documents and making hushed phone calls. When Berlin asked what was going on, he deflected. "Business matters," he said vaguely. "Nothing for you to worry about." But something in his expression made her uneasy. 2 nights before the gala, she found out why. Berlin was walking past the study when she heard voices. "Evidence is conclusive," Theo was saying. The payment to the mechanic was traced back to a shell company registered to Kendrick Langston. Berlin froze. Kendrick, Zaire's cousin. What about the accident itself? Zaire's voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. The mechanic confessed everything. Kendrick paid him $50,000 to tamper with your brakes 3 days before the crash. He was supposed to disappear afterward, but apparently he got greedy. Started making noise about wanting more money to stay quiet. Where is he now? In protective custody. He's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Silence. Then Zaire spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "My own cousin tried to kill me." Berlin's blood turned to ice. She pushed open the door without thinking. Both men turned. Theo looked alarmed. Zaire's expression cycled through surprise, concern, and something that looked like guilt. "Berlin, Kendrick is the one who caused your accident?" Her voice shook. "He tried to end you?" Zaire stood slowly. "I was going to tell you." "When? After the gala? After he had another chance to hurt you?" Berlin's hands were trembling. "How long have you known?" "I've suspected for months, but I only got confirmation today." Zaire crossed the room and took her hands. "I didn't want to worry you until I had proof. I'm your wife. You don't get to protect me from things like this." Berlin's eyes burned with tears. "Kendrick has been in this house. He was at our wedding. He's been watching us, planning God knows what, and you didn't think I needed to know?" "You're right." Zaire's voice was heavy with regret. "I should have told you. I'm sorry." Berlin took a shaky breath. "What happens now?" "Now we end this." Zaire's expression hardened into something cold and terrifying. "Kendrick thinks he's getting away with it, thinks he can wait for another opportunity to finish what he started." His hands tightened on hers. "At the gala, I'm going to expose him, in front of everyone, and he's going to spend the rest of his life paying for what he did." Berlin thought about the man who had smiled at her wedding, who had asked too many questions, who had watched her with cold, calculating eyes. He had tried to kill the man she loved. "Good," she said fiercely. "Destroy him." Zaire's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "With pleasure." The night of the gala arrived. Berlin stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her gown was emerald green silk, Zaire's choice, that clung to her curves and flowed like water when she moved. Diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist that showed off her graceful neck. And around her neck, beside the diamonds, hung the golden locket. She touched it gently. The child of strength walks forward. Tonight, she would need all that strength. A knock came at her door. "Come in." Zaire entered, and Berlin's breath caught. He was devastating in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. The jacket emphasized his broad shoulders. The crisp white shirt contrasted beautifully with his dark skin. He had gotten a fresh haircut, and his jaw was clean-shaven for once, revealing the sharp angles of his face. He looked like a king preparing for battle. His eyes traveled over her slowly. And something hot flickered in their depths. "You look incredible," he said, his voice rough. "So do you." Berlin crossed the room and straightened his already perfect tie. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for months." His hands settled on her waist. "The question is, are you?" Berlin thought about everything they had been through. The lies, the manipulation, the monsters disguised as family. And she thought about what they had found in spite of it all. Love, home, each other. "I'm ready," she said. Zaire kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Then let's go show Philadelphia who they're dealing with. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers scattered rainbow light across a sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. An orchestra played elegant melodies. Champagne towers sparkled like liquid gold. And every single person stopped talking when Zaire Langston walked in, on his own 2 feet, holding the hand of a stunning woman in emerald green. The whispers started immediately. "He's walking. How is that possible? Who is that woman? She's gorgeous. Is that really the Thorn girl? She looks completely different." Berlin lifted her chin and smiled. Let them whisper. She had faced worse than gossip. Zaire guided her through the crowd, introducing her to senators, CEOs, old money families. He kept her close, a hand on her waist, an arm around her shoulders, constant casual contact that marked her as his. And Berlin noticed that he watched the room constantly, searching for Kendrick. They found him near the bar. Zaire's cousin was dressed impeccably as always. Perfect suit, perfect smile. Eyes that tracked their movement with predatory interest. When Kendrick saw them looking, he raised his champagne glass in a mock toast. Berlin suppressed a shudder. "Soon," Zaire murmured in her ear. "Just a little longer." She nodded, her heart pounding. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Berlin smiled until her face ached, made conversation until her voice grew hoarse, watched the clock tick toward the moment everything would change. Finally, the orchestra fell silent. Zaire stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "thank you all for joining us tonight." The crowd quieted, turning to listen. The Langston Foundation has supported medical research for over 50 years. Tonight, we celebrate that legacy, and we look toward the future. He paused, his dark eyes sweeping the room. "But before we continue, there's a matter I need to address, something that has remained hidden for far too long." The atmosphere shifted. Berlin felt tension crackling through the air. "6 months ago, I was in a car accident that nearly killed me. The official report said it was brake failure, a tragic accident. Nothing more." Another pause. "That was a lie." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "My brakes were tampered with, deliberately, by someone who wanted me dead." Zaire's voice was ice. "And I now have proof of who that person is." Every eye in the room was fixed on him. "The person who tried to murder me, who has been waiting for another opportunity to finish what they started, is in this room right now." The silence was deafening. Zaire's gaze found Kendrick across the ballroom. "Isn't that right, cousin?" Kendrick's smile froze on his face. For a split second, Berlin saw fear flash in his eyes. Then his composure returned, and he laughed, loud and dismissive. "Zaire, what are you talking about? This is absurd. You hit your head in that accident, maybe harder than we thought." Nervous laughter scattered through the crowd, but Zaire didn't flinch. "Security cameras from the parking garage where I kept my car show you entering 3 days before the accident. The mechanic you paid, Russell Morrison, has agreed to testify against you. And the $50,000 you wired to a shell company has been traced directly back to your personal accounts." Kendrick's face went gray. "You're lying. This is some kind of—" "I have documents." Zaire pulled a folder from inside his jacket. "Bank records, security footage, Morrison's signed statement. Would you like me to read them aloud?" The crowd murmured, heads swiveling between the two cousins. Kendrick's composure shattered completely. "You can't prove anything. This is a setup. You're trying to destroy me because you're scared I'll take everything you have. The only thing you're taking is a prison cell." Zaire's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "You tried to kill me because you wanted my company, my money, my power, but you forgot something. Cousin." He descended from the stage, walking toward Kendrick with the steady grace of a predator. "I built Langston Industries from the ground up when everyone else in this family had given up on it. I survived a car crash that should have killed me. I learned to walk again when every doctor said it was impossible." He stopped directly in front of Kendrick. Did you really think someone like you could destroy someone like me? Kendrick looked around wildly, searching for an escape, but security guards had quietly positioned themselves at every exit. This isn't over, Kendrick snarled. I have connections, lawyers. You can't. It is over. Zaire nodded to the security team. Take him. Two guards stepped forward and seized Kendrick's arms. Get off me. Do you know who I am? I'm a Langston. Not anymore, Grandmother Vivian said coldly from her wheelchair. You're nothing, and you'll die as nothing. Kendrick screamed curses as they dragged him toward the exit. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, watching with horrified fascination. The doors closed behind him. Silence fell over the ballroom. Then, slowly, applause began to build. Scattered claps became a wave of approval that washed through the room. Zaire didn't acknowledge it. He walked straight to Berlin and pulled her into his arms. It's done, he said against her hair. He can never hurt us again. Berlin held him tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. We did it, she whispered. We did it together. Zaire pulled back to look at her. That's how we do everything now. Together. Berlin kissed him then, in front of everyone. In front of Philadelphia's elite, in front of cameras and gossips and people who would be talking about this night for years. She didn't care. She was done hiding, done pretending, done being anyone other than who she really was. Berlin Langston. Wife, partner, equal, home. 6 months later. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of the Langston mansion. Berlin stood on the terrace, their terrace, watching the gardens bloom, roses and orchids and the exotic flowers she had finally learned the names of. The fountain sparkled. Birds sang in the trees. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Warm lips pressed against her neck. Good morning, Mrs. Langston. Berlin smiled, leaning into Zaire's embrace. Good morning, Mr. Langston. So much had changed in 6 months. Kendrick was in prison, awaiting trial on attempted murder charges. The evidence had been overwhelming. Even his expensive lawyers couldn't spin their way out of signed confessions and security footage. The Thorne family had imploded. Vernon was under investigation for embezzlement. Nadine had fled to Europe to avoid prosecution and was currently in hiding. Ivory had sent a single text, "I'm sorry for everything," before disappearing entirely. Berlin had deleted it without responding. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. What are you thinking about? Zaire asked, his chin resting on her shoulder. Everything. Nothing. Berlin turned in his arms to face him. How different my life is now. How different I am. Zaire smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip. Any regrets? Not a single one. She touched the golden locket at her throat. She wore it every day now, not as a reminder of what she'd lost, but as a celebration of what she'd gained. Though the storm rages and the path disappears, the child of strength walks forward. For home is not where you begin. It is where you are finally seen. Her parents, whoever they were, wherever they were, had given her a blessing, and that blessing had come true. I love you, she said. Zaire cupped her face in his hands. I love you too, more than I ever thought I was capable of loving anyone. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of forever. When they finally pulled apart, Berlin was grinning. Gordon made waffles for breakfast. Did he? With fresh strawberries and that maple syrup you like. Zaire's eyes lit up. Have I mentioned that Gordon is my favorite person in this house? I thought I was your favorite person. You're not a person. You're a force of nature. He laced his fingers through hers. Come on, let's eat before the waffles get cold. They walked into the mansion together, the monster and the orphan who had somehow saved each other. And Berlin finally understood the truth she had spent her whole life searching for. Family wasn't about blood. It wasn't about where you came from or who gave you away. Family was about who showed up, who stayed, Who fought for you when everyone else walked away? By that definition, she had found exactly what she was looking for. She had found home. And so, my beautiful people, that is the story of Berlin and Zaire. But here's what Berlin finally learned, and what I want you to remember. Your identity is not determined by where you came from. It's determined by who you become. Berlin never found her biological parents, never learned why they gave her up, never got the answers she spent her whole life seeking. But she found something better. She found love. Real, fierce, consuming love with a man who saw past her lies and her pain and chose her anyway. She found strength. The courage to stand up to her abusers, to fight for herself, to refuse to be a victim any longer. She found home. Not in a place or a bloodline, but in the arms of someone who made her feel seen. And that, my friends, is the most powerful truth of all. You don't need to know where you came from to know who you are. You don't need validation from the people who hurt you. You don't need to be wanted by everyone. You just need to be wanted by the right ones. So if you're watching this feeling lost, feeling unwanted, feeling like you'll never find where you belong, keep walking, keep fighting, keep believing. Your storm will end, your path will appear, and your home, your real home, is waiting for you, just around the corner. Thank you for watching this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs this message today. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss another story.